Give me those.
Sorry.
You're sorry? Well, you could stuff your sorries in a sack, mister. Serenity now. You know, Falstaff, I'm really getting fed up with you coming in here and telling me the story about how these two married women agreed to meet you in Windsor Forest tonight while you're wearing that ridiculous costume. But let's just say I believe you for a moment. Do you really think you're that desirable? I mean, to me, it seems obvious that the handwriting is on the wall. And if that weren't enough, you're telling me that these women ran away because a whole bunch of fairies surrounded you. I don't know. All of this sounds very superstitious. If you ask me, I think the axe is about to fall on your neck. First of all, you're broke. Second, if you take a good look at yourself in the looking glass, you'll realize that you're no prize package. And let's face it, there haven't been very many good things in your past that you've done for others either. Look, you better get back. You look a mess. Why don't you wash your face and hands and rid me of these problems you came in here to share? If you want my advice, do all that you can to resist conning these merry wives, because I fear you're no match for them or their husbands. I'll tell you, it's fools like you who not only keep me in business, but keep me going strong. I'm afraid I really have nothing more to say to you except that when you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer. So, I don't know what you actually saw in the forest, but I can tell you this. Superstition ain't the way. Here, have some potato chips before you go. Hold on, I think I have some dip too. Here you go. Look, maybe you think that these women are going to fall for the timeless art of seduction, but what are you doing?
What?
Did you just double dip that chip?
Excuse me?
You double dipped the chip.
Double dipped? What are you talking about?
You dipped the chip, you took a bite, and you dipped again.
So?
That's like putting your whole mouth right in the dip. Look, from now on, when you take a chip, just take one dip and end it.
Well, I'm sorry, Davy, but I don't dip that way.
Oh, you don't?
No. You dip the way you want to dip. I'll dip the way I want to dip.
Give me the chip. That's it. It's go time. Serenity now! In 1977, Fleetwood Mac released their first #1 album called Rumours to capitalize on the popularity of their previous album, which featured a song rumored to be written about a Welsh witch. In The Merry Wives of Windsor, William Shakespeare capitalizes on the popularity of one of his previous literary creations, Sir John Falstaff, who ironically dresses up as a witch in this play. And although some say that Queen Elizabeth had requested that Shakespeare write another play with Falstaff falling in love, there's no evidence to support that rumor. And it seems that the cashing in part was William Shakespeare's true motivation. So let's take a look at the plot. The play begins with Sir John Falstaff arriving in Windsor and in need of money. He has Bardolph work for the host of the Garter Inn where he's lodging. In addition, he decides to court two wealthy married women, Mistress Ford and Mistress Page, in order to gain access to their husband's wealth. Falstaff writes both women identical love letters and asks his cronies Pistol and Nym to deliver them to the wives. However, both of his cohorts refuse, and Falstaff rebukes them. Out of revenge, Pistol and Nym tell Masters Frank Ford and George Page about Falstaff's intentions. Master Page is not concerned and brushes it off, But the insanely jealous Master Ford gets the host of the Garter in to introduce him to Falstaff as Master Brooke so that he can find out Falstaff's plans. Meanwhile, 3 different men are trying to win the hand of Page's daughter, Anne Page. Her mother, Mistress Margaret Page, would like her daughter to marry Dr. Caius, who's a hot-headed French physician. However, Anne's father wants her to marry Master Abraham Slender, who's a wealthy but young fool and the nephew of Justice Robert Shallow. But Anne's in love with a young gentleman named Master Fenton, whom her father has previously rejected because Fenton squandered a considerable fortune on high-class living with Prince Hal and Ned Poins. Sir Hugh Evans is a Welsh parson who decides to enlist the help of Mistress Quickly, a servant of Dr. Caius's, to woo Anne Page for Slender. Unfortunately, the doctor discovers the plan and challenges Sir Hugh to a duel. Luckily, the host of the Garter prevents this duel from taking place by telling each man a different meeting place, creating lots of amusement for himself, Justice Shallow, Master Page, and the others. But Sir Hugh and Dr. Caius decide to join forces and get revenge on the host. When the women receive nearly identical letters, each goes to tell the other, and they compare notes. And even though neither of them is interested in the aging, overweight Falstaff as a suitor, they decide to take revenge on him for his indecent proposals. They employ Mistress Quickly to be their go-between and send Falstaff encouraging letters. Master Ford, posing as Master Brooke, tells Falstaff that he's in love with Mistress Ford, but cannot woo her as she is too virtuous. But he offers Falstaff money to court her, believing that once she has lost her honor, he will be able to tempt her for himself. Falstaff cannot believe his luck and tells Brooke that he already has an appointment with Mistress Ford while her husband is out. Falstaff leaves to meet her, and Ford believes that he was right to suspect his wife and thinks that Master Page is a fool. When Falstaff arrives to meet Mistress Ford, the merry wives scare him into hiding from Master Ford in a buck basket, which is a laundry basket, filled with filthy, smelly clothes. When the jealous Ford returns and tries to catch his wife with a knight, the wives have the basket taken away and the contents, including Falstaff, dumped into the River Thames. Although this shakes Falstaff's pride, his ego is surprisingly resilient, and through Mistress Quickly's urgings, he resumes his pursuit of his sexual conquests to gain money through gifts and blackmail. But once again, when Falstaff goes to Mistress Ford, Mistress Page comes in and warns them that Master Ford is coming home unexpectedly with his hunting party. Since Falstaff refuses to go in the laundry basket again, they try to think of ways to hide him. They trick him by disguising him as Mistress Ford's maid's obese aunt, known as the Fat Woman of Brentford. Ford tries once again to catch his wife with a knight, but ends up beating the old woman, which is Falstaff, whom he despises and believes is a witch, and chases her out of his house. At this point, the wives tell their husbands about the pranks they've been playing on Falstaff, and together they all devise one last trick to humiliate the fat knight in front of the entire town. They tell Falstaff to dress as the mythical Herne the Hunter and to meet them at night by an old oak tree in Windsor Forest. Several of the local children, including Anne and William Page, dress up as fairies who pinch and burn Falstaff to punish him after the merry wives run away. Meanwhile, Master Page tells his daughter to dress all in white so that Master Slender can run away and marry her during the revels. However, Mistress Page and Dr. Caius arrange to have Anne dress in green so that she and the doctor can run away and get married. But Anne tells this to Master Fenton, and he makes a deal with the host of the Garter to arrange for a vicar to marry the two of them instead. After scaring Falstaff into believing that he's been pinched and burned by real fairies, the rest of the characters reveal their true identities. And even though he's embarrassed, Falstaff takes the joke surprisingly well, knowing that he deserved it. Master Ford tells Falstaff that he must pay back the 20 pounds Brooke gave him and takes the knight's horses as collateral. Master Page tells him that the joke is going to be on his wife, But suddenly, Master Slender appears and says that he's been deceived because the girl he took away to marry was not Anne, but a young boy. Then Dr. Caius returns with a similar story. However, he's even more furious because he actually married the boy. At that moment, Master Fenton and Anne arrive and admit that they were in love and have just gotten married. Master Fenton chides Anne's parents for trying to force Anne to marry men she didn't love, and the parents eventually accept the marriage and congratulate the young couple. The play ends as they all leave together, with Mistress Page inviting everyone, including Falstaff, to come with them and to have a good laugh over the whole incident. When we return, we'll look at some of the remarkable characters in The Merry Wives of Windsor. If you're familiar with Henry IV Parts 1 and 2 and Henry V, then you're already going to be familiar with 7 of the characters in The Merry Wives of Windsor, so let's get to them up front. First of all, we have Sir John Falstaff. Keep in mind that we don't know exactly where this story fits in with the existing timeline for these characters, but I'm going on the premise that it follows Henry IV Part 2 and precedes Henry V, in which most of these characters die by the end. In The Merry Wives of Windsor, Falstaff has been thrown off by Prince Hal, who has since been made King Henry V. Falstaff must find other ways of maintaining himself, and so he must part company with several of his cronies. He has Bardolph become a tapster who works for the host of the Garter Inn, where Falstaff is staying. He can't afford to keep Corporal Nym or Pistol either, and so he turns them loose after they refuse to carry his letters to Mistresses Ford and Page. The mistresses are the title characters and seek to take revenge on Falstaff, who's trying to woo them in hopes that they will give him money, or perhaps so that he can blackmail them or their husbands. The wives are assisted in their efforts by the simple-minded Mistress Quickly, who serves as their go-between, but is also employed by Dr. Caius, a French doctor who mangles the English language and wants to marry Anne Page. The only character that Falstaff keeps in his employ is the young page named Robin, whom Prince Hal assigned to keep an eye on the fat knight in Henry IV Part 2. Corporal Nym and Pistol tell Masters Ford and Page about Falstaff's plans to seduce their wives. Sir Robert Shallow, who appeared in Henry IV Part 2, is a justice in this play, and also the uncle of Master Slender, who's a nitwit that also wants to marry Anne Page. However, Anne wants to marry Master Fenton, who's probably the most interesting character in the entire play, and that's because of a comment Master Page makes about him when telling his friends why he doesn't want Fenton to marry his daughter. He says in Act 3, Scene 2, he kept company with the wild prince and Poins. Well, that would be Hal, the prince before he became Henry V, and his friend Ned Poins. Page continues, he is of too high region. He knows too much. No, he shall not knit a knot in his fortunes with the finger of my substance. It's interesting that despite this mention, Master Fenton does not appear as a character in any of the history plays. There's also a very interesting unseen character in this play who goes by several different names and titles, including the Fat Woman of Brainford, the Old Woman of Brainford, the Fat Woman of Brentford, the Wise Woman of Brentford, and Mother Pratt. Falstaff sneaks out of Ford's house disguised as her, but since Ford thinks she's a witch, he beats him or her mercifully anyway. And finally, there's my favorite character in the entire play, who is Sir Hugh Evans, a Welsh parson whom Dr. Caius keeps mistakenly referring to as Sir Huge. And while the others keep mocking Sir Hugh for his pitiful comprehension of the English language, it doesn't stop the parson from criticizing Mistress Quickly by saying, "You are such a simplicity woman," which is my favorite line in the entire play. When we return, we'll look at some of the plot devices and memorable scenes from The Merry Wives of Windsor. One of the major plot devices in this play is the use of letters of communication. Falstaff sends them to the merry wives to inform them of his desire to seduce them, and each of the wives conceals their letters from their husbands. In Richard II, O'Merrill tries to conceal a letter from his father concerning a plot to kill Henry IV, but it's discovered. In Twelfth Night, Maria used a forged letter to convince Malvolio that Olivia was in love with him. In Hamlet, Hamlet finds letters carried by Rosencrantz and Guildenstern instructing the King of England to kill Hamlet on sight when he arrives, but he forges new letters and his false friends receive the harsh justice instead. In Romeo and Juliet, Friar Lawrence's letter to Romeo goes undelivered due to a plague and results in a tragedy for the young lovers. In Love's Labour's Lost, Costard mixes up love letters of Barone and Don Armado with comic results. In Much Ado About Nothing, Hero and Claudio reveal private love letters that Benedict and Beatrice wrote about each other. And in Richard III, Lord Stanley sends a marriage proposal by letter to Richmond, assuring the creation of the Tudor dynasty. Shakespeare also has some of his characters in disguise, most notably Falstaff as the fat woman of Brentford and Herne the Hunter, Master Ford as Master Brooke, Mistress Quickly and the children as the Fairy Queen and the fairies, and let's not forget the two boys who dress up as Mistress Anne to fool Dr. Caius and Master Slender. As far as memorable scenes go, the two most notable are when the merry wives trick Falstaff into believing that Master Ford is going to kill him if he's caught in the Ford home. The first takes place in Act 3, Scene 3, when Falstaff is carried out of the house in a basket filled with smelly, filthy clothing. By the way, when I was in high school, some of my classmates took part in presenting this scene at the Globe Theater at Hofstra University in Uniondale, New York. It was the very first time that I'd ever seen Shakespeare performed live on stage, and it was truly an unforgettable moment. I also remember my Adelphi University English professor commenting on this play, saying that even in the biggest, wealthiest mansion, somewhere in that house, if you look hard enough, you're always going to find some dirty laundry. The second time Falstaff must escape from the Ford house is in Act 4, Scene 2, in which he must disguise himself as the fat woman of Brentford. These two scenes, along with Act 5, Scene 5, which is the final scene in the play, in which Falstaff mistakes the children for fairies and everyone has a good laugh at his expense, provide most of the physical humor in this play. When we return, we'll look at some of the major themes that run through The Merry Wives of Windsor. Although The Merry Wives of Windsor includes characters from an earlier time, the feel of this play is very much set in Shakespeare's contemporary Elizabethan era. It also includes many themes such as revenge, marriage, and the wives' management of their households, but let's focus on jealousy and lust. Dr. Caius is very jealous of Sir Hugh Evans and mistakenly thinks that the parson wants to marry Anne Page instead of his nephew Slender. He's even willing to battle him to the death in a duel, but the host of the Garter prevents any bloodshed. The theme of lust is primarily confined to that of Sir John Falstaff, who delusionally thinks himself to be irresistible to both of these married women. He doesn't seem to physically enjoy the seduction, but rather sees it as a financial opportunity for him to gain money from both wives as fees for his services, or possibly to blackmail either of them to keep their affairs a secret from their husbands, or perhaps blackmailing their husbands by not sharing word of their wives' indiscretions with the outside world. One of the more common themes in The Merry Wives of Windsor is that of deceit. At one point or another, virtually every character or group of characters is in some way deceiving other characters or other groups. For example, the play begins with Falstaff revealing his plan to deceive the merry wives, and in turn, the merry wives, along with the help of Mistress Quickly, deceive Falstaff. Master Ford disguises himself as Master Brooke in order to deceive Falstaff. Mistress Quickly deceives Dr. Caius by hiding Peter Simple in the doctor's closet. The host of the Garter deceives Dr. Caius and Sir Hugh Evans by sending them to different places in order to prevent them from dueling, and in turn, Dr. Caius and Parson Evans deceive the host of the Garter into believing that all of his horses have been stolen by German thieves. The merry wives and Falstaff deceive Master Ford by sneaking Falstaff out of the house in a buck basket and disguising him as the fat woman of Brentford. Pistol, Sir Hugh, Master and Mistress Page, Master and Mistress Ford, Mistress Quickly, Master Fenton, Robert Shallow, Dr. Caius, and the children all deceive Falstaff at the end of the play into believing that the children are fairies. Master Ford and Master Slender try to deceive Mistress Ford and Dr. Caius by having Anne run away with Slender, but Mistress Ford and Dr. Caius try to deceive Master Ford and Slender by having Anne run away with Dr. Caius. However, all of them are deceived by the host of the Garter, who helps Master Fenton and Mistress Anne run away and elope. And as you can see, teamwork plays an important role in all of these deceptions. When we return, we'll look at some of the most powerful lines from the Merry Wives of Windsor. There aren't very many long soliloquies in the Merry Wives of Windsor, but there's no shortage of great humor in the dialogue. Let's start off in Act 1, Scene 1, with Sir Hugh Evans speaking in his thick Welsh accent about what a catch Anne Page would be for Master Slender. "It is better that friends is the sword and end it, and there is also another device in my brain, which peradventure brings good discretions with it. There is Anne Page, which is daughter to Master Thomas Page, which is pretty virginity." By the way, Master Page is also listed as George Page. Master Slender demonstrates early on in this play why Anne thinks he's a fool. He replies to Sir Hugh by saying, "Mistress Anne Page, she has brown hair and speaks small like a woman." A little later in the same scene, Robert Shallow says to Sir Hugh, "Well, let us see, honest Master Page, is Falstaff there?" And I love Sir Hugh's response. "Shall I tell you a lie? I do despise a liar as I do despise one that is false, or as I despise one that is not true." How could you not love this character? In Act 2, Scene 2, Mistress Quickly visits Falstaff and praises Mistress Ford to him. Where she gets her examples, I'll never know, but they sure are funny. She begins, "Marry, this is the short and the long of it. You have brought her into such canaries as 'tis wonderful. The best courtier of them all, when the court lay at Windsor, could never have brought her to such a canary. Yet there has been knights and lords and gentlemen with their coaches, and I warrant you, coach after coach, letter after letter, gift after gift, smelling so sweetly, all musk and rustling, I warrant you in silk and gold, and in such elegant terms, and in such wine and sugar of the best and the fairest, that would have won any woman's heart, and I warrant you they could never get an eye wink of her. I had myself 20 angels given me this morning, but I defy all angels in any such sort as they say, but in the way of honesty, and I warrant you they could never get her so much as sip on a cup with the proudest of them all. And yet there has been earls, nay, which is more, pensioners, but I warrant you, all is one with her. The host of the Garter is a natural-born diplomat with a tactful way with words. He loves to play pranks on his friends, but he's also a peacemaker at heart. Here he is in Act 3, Scene 1, calming down Dr. Caius and Sir Hugh Evans. "Peace, I say, hear mine host of the Garter. Am I political? Am I subtle? Am I a Machiavel? Shall I lose my doctor? No, he gives me the potions and the motions. Shall I lose my parson, my priest, my Sir Hugh? No, he gives me the proverbs and the no-verbs. Give me thy hand, terrestrial, so. Give me thy hand, celestial, so. Boys of art, I have deceived you both. I have directed you to wrong places. Your hearts are mighty, your skins are whole, and let burnt sack be the issue. Come, lay their swords to pawn. Follow me, lads of peace. Follow, follow, follow. Let's take a look at the reaction from Falstaff in Act 3, Scene 5, after hiding in a laundry basket full of smelly clothes and being dumped into the River Thames. Have I lived to be carried in a basket like a barrel of butcher's offal and to be thrown into the Thames? Well, if I be served such another trick, I'll have me brains taken out and buttered and give them to a dog for a New Year's gift. The rogues slighted me into the river with as little remorse as they would have drowned a blind bitch's puppies, 15 in the litter, and you may know by my size that I have a kind of alacrity in sinking. If the bottom were as deep as hell, I should down. I had been drowned, but that shore was shelvy and shallow, a death that I abhor, for the water swells a man, and what a thing should I have been when I had been swelled? I should have been a mountain of mummy. And also in Act 3, Scene 5, here's a little bit of Master Ford disguised as Master Brooke, demonstrating his jealous streak after meeting with Falstaff. Is this a vision? Is this a dream? Do I sleep? Master Ford, awake! Awake, Master Ford! There's a hole made in your best coat, Master Ford. This 'tis to be married? This 'tis to have linen and buck baskets? Well, I will proclaim myself what I am. I will now take the lecher. He is at my house. He cannot scape me. 'Tis impossible he should. He cannot creep into a halfpenny purse, nor into a pepper box. But lest the devil that guides him should aid him, I will search in possible places. Though what I am, I cannot avoid. Yet to be what I would not, shall not make me tame. If I have horns to make one mad, let the proverb go with me. I'll be horn mad. And we'll finish with the most famous line from the entire play, from Act 2, Scene 2, in which Pistol exclaims, after asking Falstaff for money and being turned down flat, "Why then, the world's mine oyster, which I with sword will open." This phrase, which Shakespeare invented, has come to mean that life holds many wonderful possibilities for you, which it does. When we return, we'll look at some of the major turning points in The Merry Wives of Windsor and some correlations to the other Shakespeare plays. The first major turning point in the play is in Act 1, Scene 3, when Falstaff tells his cronies that he's in desperate need of money, disbands their company, and lays out his plan to woo Mistress Ford and Mistress Page. The second major turning point takes place in Act 2, Scene 1, when the merry wives compare letters and devise their plot to get revenge on Falstaff for his lechery. And the final turning point we'll look at today occurs in Act 5, Scene 5, when it's discovered that with the help of the host of the Garter, Anne Page and Master Fenton have snuck away from the forest company who are busy tormenting Falstaff further and eloped. At this point, there's nothing Master and Mistress Ford can do about it, and so they finally accept the happy couple. Now, let's take a look at some of the many correlations in The Merry Wives of Windsor to some of the other Shakespeare plays. Master Ford disguises himself as Master Brooke and gives Falstaff money to help him win over Mistress Ford. By the way, I looked up the definition of ford. It's a small stream. I looked up the definition of brook. It's also a small stream. In the 12th Night, the rich, witless Sir Andrew Aguecheek keeps giving Sir Toby Belch money to help him win over his niece Olivia. And in Othello, the rich and witless Rodrigo keeps giving Iago money to help him win over Desdemona. Master Ford is jealous of his wife, Alice Ford, even though she's chaste and virtuous. In Henry VIII, the king claims that his wife, Catherine of Aragon, has been unfaithful to him, even though that isn't true. In Cymbeline, Posthumus is tricked into believing that his wife Imogen has been unfaithful to him, even though that wasn't true. In The Winter's Tale, Leontes convinces himself that his wife Hermione has been unfaithful to him, even though that wasn't true. And in Othello, Othello is tricked into believing that his wife Desdemona has been unfaithful to him, even though that wasn't true. The merry wives convince Falstaff to dress up with horns as part of a sensual mating ritual. In Antony and Cleopatra, Cleopatra spills the beans about having Mark Antony dress up in her clothing as some sort of sensual role-playing. This play features characters dressed up as fairies in the woods. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, we meet Oberon and Titania, the actual king and queen of the fairies, along with many of their fairy servants, and in The Tempest, we're introduced to Ariel, a spirit who serves Prospero, and many other supernatural sprites. We see Falstaff trying to elude punishment in a buck basket and by hiding behind an arras. In Henry IV, Part 2, we see Falstaff trying to elude punishment by hiding behind an arras in Mistress Quickly's tavern. In Act 4, Scene 1, we see Sir Hugh Evans give a Latin lesson to William Page, but Sir Hugh barely has a grasp of English. It's made even worse by Mistress Quickly continually misunderstanding what he's saying. In Henry V, Alice tries to give Lady Catherine of Valois an English lesson, but botches it very badly by using crude and vulgar terms for body parts. In both cases, this was Shakespeare's way of providing humor for the common folk in his audience. The French Dr. Caius is mocked continuously for misunderstanding English, and the Welsh Sir Hugh Evans is repeatedly teased about his poor pronunciation and misuse of English words, which is not unlike Fluellen, the Welsh captain in Henry V. In addition to this play, Mistress Quickly previously appeared in Henry IV Parts 1 and 2 and Henry V, and in all cases she continuously uses the wrong words in suggestive ways whose real meanings are understandable to everyone but herself. Falstaff dresses up as the old woman of Brentford. In Hamlet, one of the male actors dresses up as the player queen while performing the mousetrap. And in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Francis Flute dresses up to play the part of Thisbe. Michael Graham Cox, who plays the host of the Garter in the BBC Shakespeare version of The Merry Wives of Windsor, also plays the host in the BBC Shakespeare version of The Two Gentlemen of Verona, although they don't appear to be the same character. Mistress Anne doesn't like her father's choice of Master Slender for her husband and chooses Master Fenton instead. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, Hermia does not like her father's choice of Demetrius for her husband and chooses Lysander. In Romeo and Juliet, Juliet does not like her father's choice of Paris for her husband and chooses Romeo. In The Two Gentlemen of Verona, Sylvia does not like her father's choice of Thurio for her husband and chooses Valentine, and in Cymbeline, Imogen does not like her father's choice of Cloten for her husband and chooses Posthumus. Mistress Quickly acts as a go-between for lovers Anne Page and Master Fenton. In Romeo and Juliet, the nurse acts as a go-between for lovers Romeo and Juliet, and in Troilus and Cressida, Pandarus acts as a go-between for the lovers Troilus and Cressida. Mistress Quickly uses the phrase, "and thereby hangs a tale," when talking about Master Fenton's wart. In As You Like It, Jaques uses the term, "and thereby hangs a tale," when describing the motley fool Touchtone, and in The Two Noble Kinsmen, Arcite uses the term, "and thereby hangs a tale," when Palamon is talking about the Lord Steward's daughter. And finally, at the end of the play, Dr. Caius is furious for having married a boy instead of Anne Page, and storms off saying that he'll raise all Windsor. This is not unlike Malvolio in Twelfth Night, after being released from prison, finding out he's been duped, and vowing revenge on the whole lot. When we return, we'll look at some interesting facts about the Merry Wives of Windsor. In preparing to do this episode, I did some research, and this is what I found. It's believed that the Merry Wives of Windsor was first performed on April 23rd, 1597, which is St. George's Day. It's also believed that the play was written in as little as 14 days specifically for this occasion. There are many legends about the Merry Wives of Windsor being requested by Queen Elizabeth because she wanted Shakespeare to bring back the character of Sir John Falstaff, who was killed off in Henry V, and put him in another play, and have him fall in love. Unfortunately, there is no evidence to substantiate this rumor, and it seems more likely that Shakespeare wanted to capitalize once again on the enormous popularity of this most beloved creation and moved him out of the history play category into the comedy genre. There's a lot of uniqueness to this play. It's the only comedy that Shakespeare firmly set in England. It's also the only play in which we have a living husband, wife, daughter, and son all present to see their daughter get happily married. One problem with the play, though, is the timeline. It doesn't fit perfectly in sequence with the other plays that include these characters, which are Henry IV Parts 1 and 2 and Henry V. But if I had to guess, it would make the most sense for it to fit between Henry IV Part 2 and Henry V, because in Henry V, Pistol is already married to Mistress Quickly, and Falstaff dies off stage early in that play. Still, it's not a perfect fit, and some things just don't make sense. In The Merry Wives of Windsor, it appears that Falstaff and Mistress Quickly are just getting acquainted, when in the two Henry IV plays, they've already known each other for a very long time. It's more likely that Shakespeare was not that concerned with continuing the exact timeline, but just wanted another chance to feature these characters. If you look at the 2001 Tim Burton Planet of the Apes movie, it's more like a reimagining of the original story than a remake of the classic 1963 film. I would say that's an accurate assessment of The Merry Wives of Windsor when comparing the same characters that appear in the history plays. Similarly, you can compare it to Shakespeare's use of Duke Theseus and Hippolyta, the rulers of Athens who appear in both A Midsummer Night's Dream and The Two Noble Kinsmen, and in both cases right around their wedding festivities, but other than that, they really don't appear to be the same characters. Herne the Hunter refers to a local Windsor area legend, and its earliest mention is in this play. However, it's not clear if Shakespeare invented it or incorporated it from earlier legends. And Windsor Forest is now known as Windsor Great Park, which is a 5,000-acre royal park in Windsor near London, which borders Berkshire and Surrey. Some elements of The Merry Wives of Windsor may have been adapted from a work by Giovanni Fiorentino entitled Il Pecorini, which is often referred to in English as The Golden Eagle, and is an Italian collection of stories written between 1378 and 1385. By the way, this is also the primary story source for The Merchant of Venice. The Merry Wives of Windsor is one of the first Shakespearean plays to be performed when the London theatres reopened in 1660, which marked the start of the Restoration. And finally, there have been no less than 3 operas, all simply named Falstaff. The first, composed by Antonio Salieri, made famous in the musical Amadeus in 1799. A second, composed by Michael William Balfe in 1838, and the most famous of the 3 by Giuseppe Verdi in 1893, which also happened to be his last opera. When we return, we'll look at some of the excellent actors in the 1982 BBC Shakespeare version of The Merry Wives of Windsor. Before we look at the actors in the 1982 BBC Shakespeare version of The Merry Wives of Windsor, I find it very interesting that although 7 of the same characters appear in other Shakespeare plays, they only choose to use one actor from The Merry Wives of Windsor to reprise his role in the history plays. So let's start with him. Gordon Gestileau once again plays Bardolph, as he did in Henry IV Parts 1 and 2, and Henry V, all in 1983, and he also plays a fisherman of Pentapolis in the 1984 version of Pericles, Prince of Tyre. Simon Chandler, who plays Master Fenton, also played Lucentio in The Taming of the Shrew in 1980, and Eros in Antony and Cleopatra in 1981. Ben Kingsley, who plays Master Ford, also played Gandhi in the film of the same name, also in 1982, for which he won an Academy Award for Best Actor. Peter Gordon, who plays Robert, also played a Lord of Tyre and a pirate in Pericles, Prince of Tyre in 1984. Crispin Mayer, who plays William Page, also played the son to Macduff in Macbeth in 1984. Michael Bryant, who plays Dr. Caius, also played a priest in the Kenneth Branagh version of Hamlet in 1996. Elizabeth Spriggs, who plays Mistress Quickly, also played Calpurnia in Julius Caesar in 1979, and Mrs. Jennings in the 1995 film Sense and Sensibility with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet. Michael Graham Cox, who plays the host of The Garter, also played the host in The Two Gentlemen of Verona in 1983. Prunella Scales, who plays Mistress Page, played Miss Bates in the Kate Beckinsale version of Emma in 1996. Tennille Evans, who plays Sir Hugh Evans, also played the Duke of Bedford, Edmund Mortimer, and a French general in Henry VI Part 1, the Earl of Salisbury in Henry VI Part 2, various roles in Henry VI Part 3, and Lord Stanley in Richard III, all in 1983. And finally, the magnificent Ron Cook, who plays Peter Simple, played the third messenger and Countess's porter in Henry VI Part 1, Richard Plantagenet in Henry VI Part 2, Richard, Duke of Gloucester in Henry VI Part 3, and returned in that role and became Richard III in Richard III, all in 1983. Now stay tuned for today's trivia challenge, which is called Cloistered. All right, now it's time for today's trivia challenge called Cloistered. Identify the Shakespeare plays in which the following characters each spend some time being cloistered. Number 1, Isabel with the Sisters of Clare in Vienna. Number 2, Emilia in the Ephesian Abbey. And number 3, Thaisa in Diane's Temple in Pentapolis. When we return, I'll have the answers for you, and we'll wrap up with some relevant lessons from the Merry Wives of Windsor. All right, now let's see how you did on today's trivia challenge called Cloistered. You are to identify the Shakespeare plays in which the following characters each spend some time being cloistered. Number 1, Isabel with the Sisters of Clare in Vienna. That was Measure for Measure. Number 2, Emilia in the Ephesian Abbey. That was the Comedy of Errors. And number 3, Thaisa in Diane's Temple in Pentapolis. That was Pericles, Prince of Tyre. Now let's wrap up with some relevant lessons from the Merry Wives of Windsor. First, never underestimate the power of teamwork. If you examine this play carefully, you'll notice that many of the characters work exceptionally well as a member of a team. If you run a business, remember that you'll get more done through cooperation than with competition. As the old saying goes, many hands make light work. Second, pick your spouse carefully. Don't let anyone else talk you into marrying the wrong person for you. Make love, common values, and mutual goals and interests your basis for picking your marriage partner. And finally, be merry. Don't let life's temporal disappointments get you down. Remember that in every adversity lies the seed of an equal or greater benefit. I'm Dave Romeo, and thank you for watching this episode of Romeo on Shakespeare. Please join me next time when an English monarch ends many lives and starts a new church so he can marry 6 wives.